Hi, everyone. I'm meteorologist Craig Flint. It is time for another Weather Academy. And we're going to go into temperature and different surfaces and how that can affect the temperature. And it's timely because this is the time of the year where you can get some variability between roadways versus, say, grassy surfaces on lawns, trees, your vehicle. Snow, especially early season snow, can accumulate more in certain areas compared to others. And we're also going to go over what happens on the roadways too, because there's a very silent danger in the winter, especially when you're driving on area roads that say don't get as much love as say I-90 or 79. That tend to experience different type of surface conditions because of the temperature of said surface. So let's talk about what we're exploring here. And you may have been driving before and on I-90 or 79, the interstates, even some of the other roads like Route 89. You'll notice the road signs that say the bridge will ice first, or some variation of that. Bridge ices before the actual road. And here's why. First thing to consider is that bridges are made of metal, all right? And metal cools much faster, right? Or there's a lot of metal in bridges anyway. So here's kind of a setup. And the reason these bridges will freeze first is because the air around it kind of surrounds the entire bridge, right? So you have cold air going underneath the bridge, cold air blowing over top of the bridge. And if the air temperature is 26 degrees, that bridge, because of the metal and because of the airflow both above it and below it, is going to cool more rapidly compared to just the roadway. So you can see in this example here, as the air temperature drops below freezing, the bridge is exposed to more of the cold air because, again, it's flowing over it and underneath it. So the bridge will tend to cool faster and ice before the main roadway. So you can see here in this example, road temperature, pavement temperature is 38. And then when you go over the bridge, it's 26. So that's something you got to keep in mind as you're out driving around this winter. Watch out, especially going over those bridges and overpasses, because they do tend to ice first. So maybe just ease off the pedal a little bit as you head over a bridge here in the winter months. So that's just kind of a quick example of why these bridges will ice up first. The other thing I wanted to discuss is the difference between grassy surfaces and pavement, because pavement can absorb warm air better than, say, unpaved surfaces like grassy surfaces, right? So that will keep the pavement kind of warmer than, say, a grassy surface. So especially early in the season, this time of the year, you'll notice that the grassy surfaces accumulate snow first and not so much the pavement, because that pavement can retain that warmth. We'll use quotes, that warmth much longer than, say, a surface that is not paved, such as a lawn or, like on trees and cars and stuff like that. So above freezing pavement will stay warmer longer than grassy surfaces. And it's just by a couple degrees, but it doesn't take much. And this is what we see, especially this time of the year. Pavement temperature could be safely above freezing, and the non-paved temperature could be a degree or two cooler. Well, what happens is, as it starts to snow, again, that pavement retains the warmth a little bit longer, so it stays above freezing compared to the grassy surfaces. Non-paved surfaces cool quicker, so that means the snow is going to accumulate faster on grassy surfaces versus pavement. So asphalt, again, retaining that heat, so it causes the snow initially to melt. Now, there's other factors here, temperature, besides temperature. How hard is it snowing is a factor that you have to consider. But generally speaking, especially this time of year, early season, and even into the winter months to some extent, the pavement will retain heat longer, which makes the accumulating snow that much harder to do on a roadway versus lawns, trees, and grassy surfaces. So we talked about, I briefly mentioned black ice, and I said it's a silent danger in the winter because there are many weather conditions that can lead to black ice. And it's something that you have to pay attention to carefully. So when you hear us mention that, you'll want to just kind of, if you are heading out on the roadways, keep that in the back of your mind. What is black ice? It's a very, very thin layer of ice that accumulates on pavement. And the thing that makes this so dangerous is you can't see it because it's transparent. So especially at night, when pavement temperatures are below 32 degrees, that ice or that thin layer of ice can accumulate on these roadways. And like I said, you'll be driving along and then all of a sudden hit a patch of black ice and it'll send you out of control. So it's very insidious and it can sneak up on you. So here's a couple of different scenarios when it comes to black ice. It can be a completely sunny day in the winter, right? And say there's some fresh snow or even snow that's banked up on the side of the road. Well, the sun, even though the angle of the sun is not as high in the sky, the sun is still a very powerful thing. And what that will do is tend to melt the snow, right? And if the sky is clear at night and there's no wind or other process to dry the pavement out, the snow that melts during the day turns into that thin layer of ice at night. You know, some of that snowpack can melt and it will run off onto the roadways. You may recall some scenarios like that where you're driving along on a sunny day in the winter and, you know, one section of the roadway will be dry and then in another section you run into a wet spot. Well, that wet spot can freeze up at night as temperatures drop below freezing. So that can lead to patchy black ice. Again, sneaks up on you. Right? So as the pavement's temperature drops below freezing, you're driving along, you think you're fine, the roadway's fine, and then you hit a patch of black ice. We don't want that to happen. The other condition is something that we call freezing rain. Now, I know this sounds pretty basic, but what is freezing rain exactly? It's not sleet. That's different, okay? It has to do with temperature profile as you go up through the column of the atmosphere. So in a freezing rain situation, obviously you're going to get ice, right? But the temperature as you go up through the column of the air, of the atmosphere, is above 32 degrees. So any raindrop, well, that's what it will fall as a regular old raindrop. And it will stay in liquid form all the way to the ground. So even though the air above the ground is above 32, the ground can be below 32, so that raindrop will fall all the way down as rain. But as soon as it hits that pavement where the temperature is below 32 degrees, it freezes. That is what freezing rain is. So it's warm enough for rain all the way up through the column, but with surface temperatures, like right at the surface, below freezing, you get freezing rain. That's what freezing rain is, and that ice can accumulate. So that's another thing that that's not fun to drive in at all. Ice is not fun to drive in at all. So that's one condition we look for. Even if it's just regular rain and you're driving along thinking, okay, I'm fine, you don't know what that pavement temperature is. And if it's cold enough, it's below 32, you're going to get freezing rain. The other thing that happens is sometimes at night in the winter, see, the temperature and the dew point run towards each other at night, right? It has to. So what happens is the temperature will start to fall and the dew point will start to come up, right? And they tend to meet in the middle. Well, when you have temperature and dew point in the same neighborhood within a couple degrees of each other, you get fog. What is fog? Well, you obviously know what fog is. It's a cloud at ground level. And it's that misty type weather, right? Driving through fog, driving through a cloud, essentially that's on the ground. Those little tiny water droplets that are suspended in the fog bank will float towards the ground And once again, if the temperature of the pavement is below freezing, guess what happens? Those little droplets freeze on contact. Could also be known as freezing fog. But that's a scenario that we see often in the winter too, where it's that foggy weather and just enough moisture, those little droplets will filter their way towards the surface. And again, if that surface is below freezing, watch out. Could be some icy type weather. So those are just some scenarios that we look at here going into the winter months in terms of temperature versus the surface versus what temperature the surface is, whether it's roadway or a grassy surface. Kind of a breakdown as to why snow will accumulate in certain places and won't in others. You'll also notice that around like trees, because trees give off heat. You'll notice right around the tree that there's not a lot of snow because the tree is giving off heat. So just kind of wanted to dive into that and just kind of make you aware that some of this stuff is problematic in the winter, because especially with the black ice, you just don't know. You don't see it. So you want to take the extra precautions driving around this winter. And of course, we will be here to keep you up to date on all of that stuff. You can always find our forecast online at yourerie.com. You click on the weather tab. Of course, we're on social media and on TV, keeping you up to date with the winter weather conditions and the roads as well. So that's the latest in terms of the Weather Academy for this week. I'm meteorologist Craig Flint. We thank you for watching and logging on. And if there's anything that you'd like us to cover, let us know. You can email us at weather@wjettv.com.